Hey guys, welcome to the Hustle Faithfully podcast where determination meets devotion.
Follow us across all major streaming platforms at www.hustlefaithfully.com. Today we're going to be discussing giving and receiving. In a recent episode, we were talking about giving and should you expect to receive, or are you wrong in an expectation to receive when you give? What's your take?
I believe that when we serve, we should serve with the idea that we may not get anything in return. But the expectation is that my reward isn't necessarily from the person. And as a believer, that's what I believe. It isn't necessarily from the person. It's me sowing in the way that I sow. God makes room for me, and it's sown back into me in a way that's far more abundant than what I gave away. You know, that's my belief. That's my expectation. There's no way for people to disappoint you that way because you're serving out of your heart and not out of an expectation for them to give you what you're giving them.
My ex-wife made a comment to me many years ago. She said, Jonathan, you give and you expect to receive. Mm-hmm. I said, you're absolutely right on that. And she said, but that's not right. And I said, why not? And she gave me her reason. But yet, I brought up, and I don't know the exact verse, but give and it shall be given unto you, pressed down, shaken together, your cup will overflow. And there is another verse that says, test me to know that I am God. And it's saying, test me. Now, I feel like there's harm whenever you pull out a single verse and you just take that one verse and say, this applies to this situation. Probably not. Now, it's possible, but you need to look at all the context. So I say that simply because me throwing those two verses together, they may be completely opposite ends of the spectrum in what they are even referring to and what they're talking about. But here's my thing. I agree with what you said as far as you give and you serve, not specifically looking for that person to repay you. However, when I give something, I do expect something back, not specifically from that person. Mm-hmm. See, I know we've used this example before. You allowed me to park some of my equipment on a previous house you lived at. And I remember you saying something along the lines of, you may not get the reward back from us for doing that for us. You're right. Mm-hmm. But yet, here's the thing. Even in that situation, whether I ever repaid you or did something for you or whatever the case may be in that situation, you'll get a reward back from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Now, it may come from me. It may come from somewhere else. But I do believe that you give and you should expect something back. Now, that's not to say, hey, Ricardo, here's $100. And me writing it down, gave Ricardo $100 on this date. So I better get that $100 back by this thing. No, you're messing yourself up in a situation like that. Mm-hmm. That's where you will have major disappointment. Right. I also live by the whole situation of when you give something to somebody, even if it's a loan, right, once the money's left, don't expect it back. Yeah. Now, if it comes back, great, wonderful. But especially between friends and between family. Mm-hmm. The moment that you loan it to them and you expect it back, there's probably about to be some tension. Now you say, hey, look here, let me bless you with this. And then they give you the money back. Great. Right. But what if they don't? Mm-hmm. If you're not expecting it back, your hands are washed. You're good. Right. You still go on with that relationship. Everything's still good. So where do you get to that point of where it's like, is sacrilegious the term? Where you tithe to a church as an example. Mm-hmm. And you say, well, I expect something back from that church. Something monetarily, let's specifically say monetarily. Where do you get to the point of where you're incorrect in your thinking? And I don't know if sacrilegious is the proper term right there or not.
Well, the thing is, I've never given to a church in any way or paid tithes in a way where I expected the church to give something back to me.
Right.
I mean, and the reason is because there's certain things when it comes to giving and being a cheerful giver and giving out of what God has blessed me to be able to have to give. that, like, it's not necessarily even, and when I say this, it's not necessarily mine to hold on to. It was given to me to share with others, but to share once again with wisdom. And when I give to the church or I tie to the church, there's no expectation other than for them to receive it and to do whatever it is that God has given them to do. Now, does that mean all of them do the right thing with it? No. I mean, heck, there's people in my family that I'm more familiar with that don't do the right things with it. Heck, I hadn't always done the right things with my own money.
Right.
You know, so there's an expectation that things will happen. But my thing is, am I willing to give it and walk away? And I am willing to give it and walk away. Now, the thing is, there's a big difference between serving and giving. All giving in some way is serving, but not all serving is where you're actually giving, in the sense of giving money and giving things away and so forth. Sometimes I just serve the needs of people in what I do to, let's say someone is going through something in a relationship or a marriage. Well, right now, I may be there to serve them in the sense of I'm comforting, where I come to their need when no one else will. Well, I'm going to serve them unselfishly in this way. You know, they have, it's an older couple that has weeds growing up at the house. I don't have to do that. I could ask them to pay me. They got 3 acres. I go out there and I mow it and cut it for them. Well, I keep down the pests and the rodents and all those things. And it's not an eyesore. I'm serving them in that way.
Right.
So it's just, there's different ways to serve people. You know, giving and serving aren't always hand in hand, you know, so when I do so, I do it because, one, I have the heart to want to serve other people, because when I'm in a situation where, you know, I may need someone or something, I'm hoping that I've sown into being able to be served.
Right.
Because I've done so in situations where they didn't have anything to give me back, you know. But that's one of these it's a biblical principle where Christ came to serve the least of us, you know, with him not walking around asking for handouts. He was walking around giving people. He was giving to people, healing people. He gave his life to other people, you know, like his whole ministry was about what he had to give, not what people, what he could get from people, but what he could give to them. He was giving them life. He was giving them an opportunity to not die in sin. He was giving them an opportunity to know God, a God that they didn't know in the way that Christ knew that they needed to know, where they would be reconciled back into right standing with him. It's an opportunity for eternal life. It's an opportunity for a lot of things, but he gave it to them without saying, hey, I need to get this from you first before I can get it. If I give this to you, you better do this for me or else. No, he said, I'm going to give this to you. And there are things that I'd like for you to do, to share this with other people. That's what I want you to do. Share it with other people. But take this. I want to give my life for you. That's the principle behind serving, is I'm going to do this. And I know if I do it well and I do it right, there's going to be benefits that come out of it for people and for reasons far greater than what I even know.
What about when you give and you feel like you give and you give and you give and you give, and you feel like nothing's really being given back to you?
Well, you got to ask yourself whether I'm giving out of wisdom or out of compulsion. There's a difference. When you give without guardrails, you're bound to have things happen where you're hurt, and you walk away with your feelings, you know, not intact in the way they should be. Because if you're being led to give in ways that are, you know, because sometimes we're given in a way where it hurts. Well, like this is something that, you know, someone may need us to do a certain thing or provide in a certain way. And you have the heart to do it, but you may not be led to do this right now for this person in this situation, because maybe God has made provisions for someone else to do it and you don't know that. Why? Because you didn't consult with it. You did it because you had a compulsion to do it. You know, if I'm not being led to do it, I'm not consulting with God to do it, and I'm just doing this, and I continue to do this, I begin to become a source where God is wanting me to be a resource. Because God sources the things that's needed, and then he chooses who he resources it through. So when I do it without consulting with him, I become the source. So when it runs out, now I'm mad because I can't sustain this anymore. Well, you weren't supposed to be the source. You were supposed to be the resource. And you're only a resource because it was sourced from somewhere else. So that's why we can't give out of compulsion. We got to give what we've been led to give, or God gives us this prompting to do something, because that's the guardrails and that's wisdom that we have that allows us to do so when we don't do so in a way that's detrimental. What happened, man?
Now I'm just trying to think of how to follow that up. That was good. That was deep.
This is what I've had to learn this over the years, because let me tell you, I have given to my detriment over the years, and it caused me to be angry at times. I mean, I'm not just talking about monetarily, but in all kinds of ways. Because there was a time where somebody could ask for $1,500, I could give it. You know, the time where I did all kinds of things for people. And then I had, you know, even my mom would say, you know, you need to think about yourself sometimes. Because I would, you know, I was always thinking about how I could help someone else and do for someone else. That was that people pleasing, which we know came from a different place. But I had to learn it's not wise to do so without guardrails. Anything we do without guardrails, anything, even in a practical sense, when we talk about driving on a road, life is winding. Life is not full of straight roads. It's winding. There's different elevations, there's different speeds, there's all kinds of things that happen in life, and it's like a winding road. Some of these roads we travel and we traverse are treacherous. But the lines in the road and the guardrails are meant to keep us in a place where we're safe. Giving and serving is that same way. There's supposed to be guidelines and guardrails that keep us in a safe place where we don't give in a way where we wreck ourselves and wreck the relationship with other people.
So where do you know where to put the stakes for the guardrails? How do you know exactly where to block off and where to keep open?
Well, see, that's just it. We don't, like, even the people that build the guardrails don't determine where they go. It's state guidelines that are already in place that they have to abide by. So for us, there's already guidelines that we have to abide by. So it's us consulting with the one that's made the guidelines in order to know how we're supposed to proceed in this place. You know, like, I don't know where the lines are until I consult with one who's created it. Like, okay, Lord, am I supposed to do this? And if he says yes, I know within the lines, you know. But if I hear nothing, then that may be a situation where I need to not do it because I haven't gotten to go ahead to do so. Now, there are some small things we can do where it's not going to be in any way. Just somebody told you that they needed a ride from here to the QT. Okay, well, if you decide you want to do that, not to let someone who has an AK in their hand and looks like they got blood running down their forehead and it looks like they killed 10 people. That you don't need to consult with God to know whether that's somebody you should pick up and take to the QT or not. You know, that's you know better than that. But there's certain things where you have to pray about where you know that you're going to put yourself in a position, or you could put yourself in a position where you end up creating attention that wouldn't exist if you hadn't done that. Like, I'm going to do this because I want to do it. I have the heart to do it and desire to do this. Maybe that wasn't for you to do. And so now you got to continue to do this because you put yourself in a position where this person's not coming to you. They were never meant to come to you. And now you're angry. Why you keep calling me? Because you became their source and you weren't supposed to. Don't get mad at them. You chose to do that. You know? So now you got to cut them off or stop doing it. Guess what? If that was somebody you had a decent relationship with or some sort of relationship with, guess what typically happens? It's fractured now. Because in their mind, you're letting them down. You're not helping them. You're like or you may be judging them. Well, I told you I needed so and so until I could do so and so. Well, once again, it wasn't for you to do. So there's a fractured relationship now. Your feelings are hurt, and all these things happening because you chose to move without consultation.
How do you know when you actually hear the voice you're talking about versus you just wanting to or not wanting to?
Yeah.
How do you know the difference?
For me, there's a peace in doing it that the outcome doesn't matter. Like there's a peace when I do things where it doesn't matter whether the person reciprocates. It doesn't matter. Like when I meet somebody on the side of the road, let's say I pull up to a stoplight and someone's sitting there and they got a sign up or whatever. There are times over the years where I said, especially people that have been with me, why are you doing that? Because they're just going to go off and get another hit and do this and do that and all these things. And they probably got a car parked over behind the building and they're going. all those things. If I don't feel a peace in doing so, they can look as destitute and as needy as they want. And a lot of times I'll just keep driving. But there's a time where I feel a prompting and a peace in doing so, where I give, and I may give more than I intended to, and not even think about it. There's there's nothing I feel that says don't do this. And when I give it, I don't think about what they could do or how. I gave a guy some money not long ago at he was sitting by the dumpster on the other side of a bank with no shoes on his feet, and it was on a hot day a couple months back. I mean, it was really, really hot, and I had some shoes with me, and I had something to drink and so forth, and I didn't have much on me. I just said, you know what? I felt like I needed to go and help them because I kept seeing people drive by. So I feel like I need to go, and what I got on me, I just give it to him. When I took him a pair of shoes, I gave him some water, and I gave him some money. He was so appreciative. He was so thankful. He just kept thanking me, kept thanking me, kept thanking me. And I said, you know what? I could have done what most have done and passed by, but I can't judge them pass by. It may have been for me to do this. It may not have been for them.
Right.
So I can't worry about what other people did or didn't do. I had to honor what I was supposed to do. It was on me to do this. So he got up and walked whatever to the restaurant to get him something to eat. Great. That's good. I gave that not to get something back. I gave it because I was given a peace and a prompter to go and do this. So whatever he did after that was between him and the Lord. I was obedient, though, doing what I was supposed to do. And I laid no judgment on people that saw him and kept going, or on what he did afterwards, even though he did exactly what I expect someone who's hungry to do, go get something to eat. And he put the shoes on his feet where his feet weren't blistered and all this stuff. Like, I felt great about that because I know I did it right.
Right.
So for me, that's what happens when I give in that way. There's a peace in doing so. And most times there is an immediate response that lets me know this was something that was needed. And it wasn't just needed, it was needed for me. You know, so for me, that's how it happened. I don't know about everybody else. It may be different for other people, but for me, that's how it typically happens for me.
Interesting. So it's really just a prompting, a stillness, a peace inside of you that tells you, hey, Ricardo, this is for you. This is what you're supposed to do.
Oh yeah, it's like and it happens, and it's one of those things that happens instantly at times, where it's like I could be in a situation, and it's like, bam, it's like, okay, I see something, and I may try to dismiss it, and it's instantly like, go and do something. It's like, go and do that, or you hear somebody that has something going on, and it hits you. I can actually help them, and it's not just I want to help them, because it may be a situation where I don't want to do a thing. I want to sit here like everybody else and do nothing. But then there's this thing that happens where it's like, no, I want you to go help. It's almost like this inner conversation that happens where you know it's not just you, because if it was just you, you'd say, no, I would just screw it. I'm fine sitting here. Right. I'm having a great evening. I'm not bothering anybody. I don't want to get up, but there's this thing. Whereas, because I started to do it at a gas station, where I walked out of the gas station in another state. It was a sheriff. I walked out of the gas station, went back to the car, and I got in the car and I sat there. I said, I know I was told to pray with that sheriff, to put my hands on him right there in front of the coffee machine and pray with him, and I didn't. I know that wasn't just me saying do it, because it wouldn't leave me. And when I got in the car, it was like, what are you doing? I got up, told my wife, I'll be back. Went back inside, caught him. He was coming out there as I was going. I said, hey, can I pray with you? And he stopped for a minute and looked at me. And then he said, yeah. So I walked over to the car with him, placed my hand on his shoulder and prayed for him, prayed for his safety out there, and prayed for his family. Not realizing he was dealing with a lot, at that moment. And it meant a lot for me to stop and pray with him because he needed it. Now, how do I know that? How do I know that there's that? It's not just him going through something, but in this moment, he needs this. And I was walking away from it, having felt that I needed to pray with him. I needed to go up to him and in some way serve him in this moment, in this way. And when I tried to walk away, which is what I wanted to do, I couldn't, because it wouldn't leave me. I had to go and do so, not knowing that it would serve him well in me doing so.
Giving and receiving. So you gave of your time, you gave of yourself to pray with the sheriff. You gave of your shoes, a little bit of money, and a little bit of water. What do you receive from that? Here's something that I would challenge you with, and everybody that's listening.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you may not receive another pair of shoes, you may not receive water, and you may not receive money for what you did to that guy.
Mm-hmm.
How did you, in your heart, in your head, how did you feel right after doing that?
I felt like I had been obedient, like I had done the right thing. I felt like, there's a certain humanity that we all have when someone is going through something, someone is struggling. I have the desire to see people win. So when I see somebody going through something and they overcome, I rejoice.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I'm watching a movie and I see this redemptive story, or a mother and son, a mother and daughter, father and daughter reunited, or something happens, a lot of times I tear up. I mean, I cry outright, but I tear up. Why? Because there's this redemptive nature of humanity that I love when people are able to overcome. People are able to come together. People are able to get things that they need in a situation where they didn't think they would. They would make it out of it. That's something that I think is innate to most people if they don't run from it.
Mm.
Because a lot of times when people lean into it, they have been hurt in the past by people that are taking advantage of them in situations where they have been vulnerable to people. They have been open and receptive to people, where they've tried to help people, invited people into their life because they have this desire to help and see people win. They've been bitten by that. So a lot of times people will run from it, and it's counterintuitive for us as humans to do so. We are supposed to connect and be in community, but sometimes people run from it because they think they're protecting themselves, but they're actually keeping themselves away from the thing that we're actually supposed to gravitate towards because of the pain. So for me in that moment, I felt great. And I'm real quick, I'm going to read the scripture. This is Luke 6:38. And in this scripture, it says, Jesus promises that if we give, it will be given to us in good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, and poured into our lap. He also says that the measure we use to give will be the measure we receive. This verse shows us that giving and serving are not only acts of obedience, but also of faith and trust. This is what, as a believer, why and how giving or serving should take place. It's trusting that even if they can't return it, he will.
Right.
That's where the faith lies, in him and what he's paid for. Christ died for a reason. So part of the reward of what he died and paid for is you trusting that the reward isn't just for them, but it's for you too.
Mm-hmm.
And you may not know what it looks like, but there's a reward there for you that at times will return to you in ways that you didn't even know, or wouldn't even believe, wouldn't even ask for. You don't even know to ask for that.
Give me an example of something that you've seen in your own life happen to you, not to someone else, where you've seen this come to fruition.
My wife was an act of trust in faith in God. I would not have chosen to meet my wife like I did and when I did. I have always been one to just kind of go out there, and if I see something I like, she's shaped a certain way or looks a certain way, if that's what I want, then I go after it. But I've also been bitten by chasing after what I see in that way, and not consulting with him and trusting in him. So for me, it was one of those things where I had to quit serving myself. And I had to trust in what he said, and I had to go about looking to serve someone else. So Lord, help me so that I'm positioned and I'm in a place where there's someone, my wife being this one in this situation, my wife had never been loved by a man in her life. She wasn't covered. She wasn't protected in the way that a woman would want to be covered and protected. She wasn't provided for. She didn't have that spiritual covering that a husband gives a wife. She didn't have a father around that would do those things. That was a need she had. There was someone needed to serve her in that way. I was in a position where I was tired of trusting my own ways and my own thoughts when it came to doing these things and choosing a partner. I prayed and consulted with him. And I said yes to him before I said yes to my wife. I said yes to the woman that he has for me, because that would be the woman that I would serve, that needs someone to serve her in that way. And what was so important for me is that my yes in him allowed me to say yes to her in situations where my flesh wanted to say no.
Right.
And I wanted to run from the fight. I wanted to run from the agitation rather than letting that beautiful pearl be formed in the midst of the agitation. But I had to have something to anchor my yes to, and that was trust in him and faith in what he said. Mm-hmm. So that for me, that's one of the greatest examples for me of being able to serve because I trust what he said, and I have faith that me serving this way will produce in me, through me, and for me if I do so unselfishly.
I have a very similar story with that. I remember when I went through my divorce, mm-hmm. I don't think I'll ever forget my mom making the comment to me to basically keep my head up.
Yeah.
And she said, you will find somebody that will love you in the way that you love my ex-wife.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't believe that when she said that.
Yeah.
Simply because I saw my level of love, because I love deep. I love her. Right. And I saw how that was reciprocated from her to me. And so I thought that that's just the way that females were.
Right.
I mean, that may be a dicey way to put it on a public podcast, but there for a period, I thought that that's just how all females were. And even when my wife and I found each other, I wasn't particularly looking for a relationship. Mm-hmm. Yet I can say that 6 years into this relationship, my mom was right. And it still just blows my mind at, number one, things that Kate will put up with, how supportive she is. There's a large part of me that feels undeserving of it. Even though it's exactly what my mom told me existed, it's still just to know that she does exist and she is my wife and she is there with me. And like, I'm wearing a bracelet right now that she gave me about a week ago. Yeah. And if I pop it off and look on the inside, it says, I will love you forever. Yeah. And it's those types of things that you give. Yeah. Like we've talked about a couple of times, you may give to somebody and it doesn't come back from that person, but it does come back from somewhere, someone. It does come back. Yeah. And it's frustrating when you're going through it. Obviously, we're talking love stories right now. It's frustrating when you're giving and you're not really receiving back. But man, when it does come back, it's like, oh, wow, this was worth it.
Yeah.
This was worth it.
It absolutely is. It's the very thing and the basis for what the book, now we talked about this before and other people have mentioned it, 3 feet of gold, 3 feet from gold was about. You just keep digging, you keep swinging away, keep swinging away. It seems fruitless. Why do I keep giving? Why do I keep going through this? Why do I keep serving? Why do I keep putting up with all this? You keep on. And the thing is, you're stopped 3 feet from the goal. Now you may be one swing away from breaking through, but you didn't know it because you grew weary in doing well. You know, and that's what we can't do. We're instructed in the Bible to not grow weary in doing well. Sometimes life will weary you because you get punched. You get hit from so many different angles, and I can only block so many punches.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's the thing when I talk about community, why it's so good to not draw away from community when you've gone through something, to draw closer and be in community, because you don't have to block all these shots. Because if you got people around you, we've talked about relationships and all these things over the course of months. When you got people around you that are able to see things that you can't see sometimes, there are blind spots you have, where there may be someone or something that's wanting to attack you in a place where you don't have the ability to see. guess what? People around you may see it.
That's right.
They may confront the attacker before I'm even aware there is one.
Right.
That's why it's so important to have community to do so, because we're going through the toughest times of your life where you feel, that you've been hit and you've been beaten and you've taken all these shots and you've gone to your knees and you say, I can't take another shot. You got someone in there that'll come to your side and say, you know what? You don't have to take another one because the next one comes this way. I got it. That's what having a good wife is like. That's what having a good business partner is like. That's what having a friend or a brother is like. Having that community around you, because it helps you in these moments where you will be wearied. But it's one thing to be wearied. It's another thing to get to a point where you grow weary in doing well. I can be wearied while doing well, but I can't grow weary in being weary from doing well. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So it's a difference in the two.
Mm-hmm. So how do you make sure that you don't grow weary? How do you isolate yourself from growing weary of doing good?
Like I said, it takes a village to raise a child.
Yep.
It takes a village to grow a man. And this village is a community of other people and other men, mentors, and so forth. A wife that's willing, like you said, to put up with some things that helps you grow in ways that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Right.
Like my wife is that. My wife aggravates the heck out of me at times. She agitates me sometimes. But you know what? There's some necessary agitation that's needed in my life, because if I didn't get it, I would stay in a cycle of running in and out of agitation and necessary agitation. Because what's going to happen? It's like going to school or being in class. I can take this test and I can hate the study that goes into it. I can hate the work and the preparation, and then take the test and flunk it, and then repeat this all over.
That's right.
And I'll keep going through it. And I keep going through it. It's this cycle. And you'll say, and the question you ask is, well, why does this keep happening to me? Or why do I keep running into this type of person? You're not running into this type of person. You keep running into this adjutant, and it just shows up in a different person because you refused to deal with it the last time you had an opportunity.
That's right.
To deal with it.
You'll keep going around that mountain until you finally win, until you finally learn what you are to learn.
Yeah.
And you were talking about your wife agitates you. Every wife, every husband should, to a degree, because that's part of growth. That's part of growth. That's not a negative thing.
No.
My wife is the biggest person in this world that will play devil's advocate with me. I will say something and she will challenge it, even if she agrees completely with what I'm saying. And, after 6 years now, I've gotten used to it. But to begin with, I didn't understand why she did that. And now I do. It makes you think in different ways. It's very, very good for what you're going through. It's very good to learn and to grow and to expand.
Well, yeah, guys, y'all hear this time. This time is telling us that we talk too much and talk too long. So what we're going to do, we will continue this discussion, maybe a different aspect of it in another episode. But we thank you guys for being here with us. If you're going to hustle, remember, guys, hustle faithful. Talk to you guys later.
Until next Thursday, remain blessed and unstoppable.